And welcome back to another episode of the California Golden Bearcast, a proud partner of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Today, I am here alone. This is Rob. Andy is not here because we are here to talk about some basketball, men's and women's. And with me today are the three basketball extraordinaire folks from our dear site, Radford, California. We got Nick, Terence, and Don. Thank you, gentlemen, for sparing an hour on Wednesday night to talk about what might transpire at Haas Pavilion.
Excited to be here.
All right. Well, or is Don frozen?
Oh.
I think we've lost him a little bit. Although I'm here, he's reconnecting.
Okay. It's fine. I can cut this part out. Internet problems. Everyone has internet problems. It's fine. But it is funny how his face froze in that particular frame.
The tech capital of the world.
Is he back? Oh, Don's back. Don's back.
My internet just lagged there for a second. Sorry about that.
It's my turn next.
No worries. Don, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Looking excited to basketball starting here in a few weeks. Literally less than 2 weeks, there'll be an exhibition game, so we are on the cusp.
That's crazy to me. That's crazy that we're already at basketball season. All right, let's get right into it. So the format for today, for the folks listening, all of these guys have prepped 3 predictions, takes, questions that they kind of want answered from the season for both men's basketball and for women's. We're going to go around, share those, talk about certain ones for a little bit, and that'll be our conversation for the day. So I'm going to go in a circle based on who's on my screen. So we'll start with the top left. Terence, give me your first one for men's basketball.
You cut out a little bit there. You said start at the top left. I wasn't sure who that was.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry. I meant start my screen top left, so we'll start with Terry.
Okay. I think, I don't have any unique questions. My question is the same as everyone else's. Is, we saw an almost, 85% turnover in terms of points, rebounds, assists from last year's roster, with only Rydas and Lee Dort and DJ Campbell as the 3 returning contributors. So without Jeremiah Wilkinson and without Andre Stojakovic returning, what does next year's team look like in scheme, and where are we going to get our points from?
Yeah, this was a question that I sort of tried to analyze numerically, which is if you go onto KenPom and you just look at returning production rankings, over the last 2 years, unsurprisingly, Cal is ranked in the bottom 20 in the nation both years. Last year, they functionally had no returning production. They gave a couple of minutes to some backup bigs that. This year, at least, we have 3 returning rotation players who should play. How much they will play and how much continuity there'll be, is a lot less than we were used to in sort of the old world of college basketball, but maybe actually not that much different than the new norm across the entire nation. But it's still a team that, from the traditional fan perspective, is completely turned over.
Don, any thoughts?
I don't know. I feel like this is a team of 10 starters, which means you have 0 starters. Really, really hardcore defined. In the aggregate, it's the best talent he's got coming in because he's got a bunch of people who are 90, 91, 92. He's just not bringing in a Tyson 95 or an Andre 95, 96. So the talent's there. It's going to be a coaching challenge to kind of make it fit, make it have 5 people who gel as a unit, and then generate scoring. like I said last year, like with Blacksher and some of the others, people don't suddenly have 3-year careers at a lower conference and suddenly become this great unknown quantity incendiary thing in their 4th year of their grad year at a major conference. So I'm not expecting Camden to be all ACC, but I think there's a chance to have a really good cohesive unit of 5 here that just works together well, because shooting is better across the board. If you look at the stats from everybody, shooting is better across the board. Um, but I'm interested to see how Coach Madsen puts a cohesive unit of 5 starters, 2 to 3 rotational players behind it. Like I said, he's got 10, I feel like, but we know he likes running 7 or 8 man rotations here. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Nick, you're next in my little board of 4. So give me your question or take for men's basketball.
I think looking through the roster, one of the things that I am curious about is how well John Camden and Milos Ilic translate defensively, because each of these guys brings a really interesting offensive skill set at a big position, where like Ilic, brings a crazy high assist rate for a guy who played the 5 at Loyola, Maryland, as well as good shooting from all over the court, excellent rebounding rates. Can he play the 5 and defend the rim at the ACC level at 6'10", or is that going to be a really tough transition to go from a team playing, in a small conference that's a Patriot League team, for what it's worth, not a particularly successful Patriot League team, where he was sort of the guy. And it's a similar story for John Camden, where he's coming from Delaware, who had a spectacular offense in the Coastal Athletic Association, I think the best offense in the conference, and an offense that could have played at the ACC level, maybe lower end, but really good for a small conference. But the team was kind of a disaster defensively. I don't think that Camden probably is going to play the 5 at Cal. He's probably more of a stretch 4 at his size. But regardless of exactly how they're used out there, can they play defensively? Because I like some of the offensive tools where we have these guys who appear to be really excellent passers for their size. They can shoot for their size. There's some interesting skill sets. If they can play defensively, I'm curious what we can throw out there.
I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit. One of my first comments here is I think the big men are really intriguing as a group. You've got enforcer roles with Lee Dort and DK Dute, who from the tape, we know what Dort did last year is kind of being that body down low with good hands, actually. He had better hands than Sissoko. And DK Dute is also this enforcer type. And then you've got, like you said, Ilic, Camden, and also Mantis Kasanis, who's got a shot, like a shooting touch as a big man. So I'm intrigued by how the coaching staff uses those 4 or 5 big men in a multitude of ways. Because do you go double big man with Ilic as a stretch 4 and Dort as your enforcer down below, and maybe Camden plays some version of a small forward kind of role. I'm really intrigued by what he's going to do with the big men who have. There's depth there, and there's varied skills there.
And Petraeus is also, he played big forward for us last year, but with all of the size, maybe he gets to play much more of a 3 this year, and take on sort of, I guess one of our leadership roles too, because he was kind of a leader last year. So I expect he should be able to step up and maybe be one of the team captains.
Petritis is actually an interesting comparison point.
Yeah, he went to the ACC All Media Days.
Sorry. I could say Petritis was an interesting comparison point as an example of a guy who had like crazy statistics at a lower conference level, and then he comes to Cal and the ACC and like some of what he did translates at the higher level, and some of it maybe is less so. So like he was an assist monster at Air Force, where he was like the fulcrum of their offense, and that didn't really play at the ACC level. But he kept his low turnover rate. He kept, like reasonable shooting percentages. Kept his scrappy rebounding, and so you just don't know necessarily like what's going to translate.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just to like wrap up that point before we move on, like I think the big thing from my end regarding the transfers, and particularly the bigs in particular, is like we need one of them to hit, and like not necessarily like as what Nick's alluding to is like all of their skill sets translate, but if we can get more than half of their skill set to translate to the ACC level, then we'll have a plus big in the rotation. And that's kind of the thing that Madsen's, been here or there with last year and the year before, is some of the guys he brings in from lower conferences, you're going to have to take those gambles with. But we had more plus, I think, payouts on the wing spots in year one, with like Keontae Kennedy, Jalen Cohn to a certain extent, not like a half wing because he's a really good shooter at the point guard spot. But then last year, like a lot of those players that were brought in, their abilities didn't translate and didn't pay out. With the Blackshires and his shooting didn't necessarily translate like fully over, and some of the bigger rotations. And then BJ getting hurt definitely didn't help with that, and that's not really his fault, right? Not that his skill set didn't translate, but just his inability to play. And JOJ being not there for kind of, or on and off really for the whole season. So I think he needs to be able to hit on some of these transfers, and that's probably where you'll see guys moving all over the depth chart, I would assume, probably for the first month and a half. But cool. All right, that's our first points on men's basketball. We'll switch over to Sharman Smith and the women's team. Don, I'll start with you on this one. Your first hot take, point, question, whatever on Cal women's basketball.
So Puff Morris is getting all the press, and rightly so. McDonald's All-American coming in, was number 30 or 35 ranked overall prospect in the country. I'm going to probably take that point guard spot immediately and be an immediate starter. I'm predicting, though, that Taylor Barnes, the other high-profile recruit, is going to have as much or more of an impact on the first year. Not to say that Puff isn't going to deliver, but I'm intrigued by Taylor Barnes. Bigger, can play a little bit of that stretch forward concept, wing attacker a little bit more, I think, than Puff can. And this lineup, as we were talking before we started taping here, is devoid of bigs and maybe interior play. And I think Taylor Barnes is able to bridge that better, and is going to show and be a difference maker as the season progresses on. So, we're all talking about Puff all the time, and rightly so again, but I think Taylor Barnes, we're not talking enough about her going into the season. That's my take.
On you, Terence.
I think obviously the biggest worry for the women's team, as everybody knows, is our complete lack of size. After losing Michelle and Michelle last year, and Abador to injury, and Marta Suarez. So we lose all of our rebounding. So I think Don's right that Taylor's going to get an immediate opportunity to contribute, just because aside from Claudia, who's much more of a, even though she is 6'4", she's much more of a shooting, scoring forward, and has never been anyone's idea of a tough inside player. The only inside player that we have aside from her is transfer Sakima Walker, who is the daughter of former NBA player Samaki Walker. So just by opportunity, Taylor's going to get a lot of opportunities to grab as many rebounds and play on the inside for us early.
So what I am curious to see now is
Nick?
if if we're going to see a completely different style of play from Sharman Smith. And the reason I say that is because I see this team's skill set as being very different than last year's team. Obviously, last year was defined by 3-point shooting, spacing with guards, and then Michelle Onia kind of doing everything inside. And it seems like Cal's personnel just isn't set up to play that way. We do have Lulu Twydale back, but I wonder if we're going to see a team that tries to be much more up-tempo, perhaps, at times, on both ends of the floor, where, if you're trying to look at, like, what could Cal potentially excel at, Miracle Shepherd is a transfer from LSU who got a lot of minutes on a team that really knows how to play defense and didn't produce a ton offensively. Can she and Puff Morris combine to just play really spectacular pressure defense on the outside and force a lot of turnovers? That is a viable strategy in women's basketball, but it's also not a strategy that Sharman Smith has ever particularly embraced. Like, Cal has never been a team that forces a lot of turnovers against for the opponent. So is that in fact the best way for this team to play? And if so, can Sharman Smith coach them to do it? I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned Miracle Shepherd coming in. I feel like she's almost Kayla Williams 2.0. Kayla came out from USC and was, part of that. It wasn't really asked to do much offensively. It was really in Lindsay's system down there, more of a defensive presence, and came in and kind of, I think, exceeded all of our expectations pretty early on as being extremely well-rounded. Obviously multifaceted. Picked up a lot of a scoring punch, but was also a lockdown defender on the perimeter. I'm hoping Miracle can kind of do that, like I said, Kayla Williams 2.0 here, just being able to come in and take what she's learned and absorbed, at LSU, and grow from there and be a little more multifaceted for us.
Just taking a look at Miracle's freshman year at Mississippi State, where I don't think they were as deep as that LSU team that she came off the bench for. She was a better scorer and had a lot more, 48 steals over 30 games, and scored 5 points a game versus 4 points a game at LSU. So I think, given opportunities, she could definitely produce.
Her steal rate is absurd. Whether or not that translates to Cal's defensive system, different question.
Yeah, it does have the feels of what we were talking about with the men's, of just because of the loss of, weirdly, women's team to graduation and the men's team to the transfer portal. But regardless, a lot of production is needing to be replaced. And there's just a lot of question marks on who is going to be stepping into that void. And given that they'll be given opportunities early on, and it's not really set.
I think the big difference, though, for the women is that we know that our lead player is going to be Lulu. And she may average over 20 points a game for us this year.
She'll definitely have the license to shoot. That's clear. If she's open, she's much like Sharman yelling at Io and Lulu much of last season whenever they were open and they weren't shooting the three. Yeah, she would yell, "Shoot it!" You could hear it. Yeah, Don knows. So I'm assuming that'll be the case again with Lulu. At the very least, she'll get the green light whenever she has any sort of space whatsoever. I do wonder, like, those first couple games, particularly when we play some lower league teams, because the only tape that they have on this team is going to be like Lulu, right? Like, that's the person you're probably looking at. So, like, how tightly they guard her without having the spacing of Io on the other side of the court will be very interesting to see what Sharman's counter to that is, because that'll be a good tell for later in the year. If we can't happen to develop someone to take on the spacing on the opposite side of the wing, then how she deals with Lulu being guarded so uptight and maybe doubled early on in possessions is going to be huge. But yeah, okay. That was our first round of women's takes. Let's flip back to the men's here. Nick, your second point for the men's basketball team.
Let me pull up the roster and remind me what my second take was. Oh yes. So my question is basically, is Justin Pippen ready to take a second-year leap? He was kind of buried on the bench at Michigan, but Michigan was a really good team, and they had a rotation that made sense for them. So that's not necessarily a demerit on Pippen. There's been plenty of players who aren't quite ready to fill in on a really good team as a freshman, and there's been a long history of dudes who need that year of adaptation to the college game, a year of strength and conditioning. Pippen's got the recruiting pedigree, certainly the genetics, to be a really valuable player. Cal needs somebody to take on the ball handling, scoring, creating mantle that we lost in Wilkinson and Stojakovic. It's not necessarily clear who that's going to be. Can Justin Pippen be one of that guy? I assume that he's going to be given every opportunity, so then it's a question of can he deliver given that opportunity.
Pippen and Sammy Yaney are the interest. They both, like, you could put, for that whole conversation, you put Sammy Yaney in that exact same conversation, right? He was a 4-star recruit 2 years ago, originally committed to Arizona State, ended up at, was it Grand Canyon?
Grand Canyon.
Yeah, and played like 10 total minutes or something like that. And I don't know if there's academics, injuries, or what. I don't fully know that path from Arizona State commit to GCU, and now coming to us as a untapped potential, I'll say. So, Pippen, was it depth rotation, just didn't fit in, or just couldn't quite, hack it at that level? Yaney, what happened to him? Because he was, he had high major offers coming out as a high school 4-star. And now he ends up here as, a reclamation project, question mark. Pippen, maybe, the same thing, question mark. I want to see if there's untapped potential for both of them to step into, what they were supposed to be coming out of high school, I'll say.
I think there's a third sort of incoming chancellor who has produced at the ACC that we haven't mentioned yet is Day Ames as well, who did average close to 9 points at Virginia, which at least we know he can already play at this level. I think all of us are kind of searching because we don't know who of all of these unseen players, how are they going to fit together, and who's taking the lead in the rotation.
See, let's have another name in, Chris Bell from Syracuse. He's only got 1 year left, but it's the same thing. I'm actually more intrigued by Chris Bell a little bit because I think his shooting numbers are better than Day. And I'm looking at improved shooting across the board as a team. Bigger too, so 6'7", can play more of a wing spot than Day, who's slightly undersized and is expected to be pure backcourt. But yeah, he's another one that coming over from ACC play was a solid contributor for Syracuse. Now he's back home. He's originally from Concord. Is there something there that gets unlocked in his last year of college eligibility?
I mean, the two guys we haven't really also talked about is the two freshmen, right? In Giovanni Ruff and
That's my third point. We're gonna get there, Rob.
Like those two guys are highly touted recruits too. Like if we can strike, and we get a plus player out of him or a rotation guy out of one of those two guys, like that raises the floor significantly if we can get that production out of them right away. Because once again, like you're talking about guys who are highly rated coming out of high school, and there are multiple of them on this team. And some guys with years in college basketball, or 1 or 2, and then some guys brand new. If you can get something out of those guys, then you start to see like how the pieces are going to fit into like our I don't want to say starting lineup because I feel like we're going to play a lot, but probably the ending lineup is more important than our starting lineup. So can one of these guys play their part into in grabbing a hold of one of those ending 5 slots?
Yeah, I actually kind of worry that Reedus might get lost in that by the end of the season, and DJ as well. Like once you kind of shake this out over non-conference early conference play, what's your finishing 5? And I can foresee a lineup where it doesn't include Reedus or DJ, who are right now, the faces of the program coming in. I love Reedus. Reedus' game all encompassing. He's also not the most offensively skilled player across the board. I mean, he excels at that off ball movement, off ball rebounding, but if he might be a shooting liability at times. And if you're looking for pure scoring, it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, what that finishing lineup looks like by the time we reach, mid-January.
Some things in life are just made for each other. Peanut butter and jelly, macaroni and cheese, Modelo and college football. College football season is Modelo season, and the season has officially kicked off. The Modelo Recruiter is back in action, looking to reward full-time fans who give their all for their team and their school, week in and week out. If you're listening to this, you've been recruited. So lace them up and get out there. And don't forget to make time for a well-deserved ice-cold reward. Because college football wouldn't be the same without you. So grab yourself a Modelo and enjoy the official beer sponsor of the College Football Playoff, Modelo.
Moving on to the next round of women's basketball takes, I can get us started here because I think we sort of touched on it, but I think it's the elephant in the room is how big of a problem is Cal's lack of size and depth in the interior going to be? We touched on who Cal lost in terms of post players, and Terry, you mentioned Sakima Walker, who has the size and the talent, but has also had a lot of trouble with injuries in her South Carolina career prior to transferring to Cal. And so I think it would be naive, I think, to expect her to play more than 20 minutes a game. And it's also a serious concern about like her availability throughout the entire season. She's had, nagging injuries at basically her entire career. Obviously, we hope that it isn't an issue. And so, do we see a lack of size as being a big problem in terms of Cal's ability to defend, rebound, or is this something that is maybe an opportunity to we've got these athletic guards, let's let them run, let's spread the floor? How do we see that playing out?
I think a lot of it's going to be matchup dependent once we hit ACC play. When I look at the ACC preview of the other teams, there's not like universal size across all the boards. However, Stanford, I'll use Stanford as an example. It's almost like a Terra Vanderveer classic lineup of like having 3 oversized players who are all good and skilled. So you're gonna really notice it in some matchups. But not as an average night by night ACC problem. Stanford, you're going to definitely notice it. So I'm hoping, knock on wood, that coaching and scheme can overcome the lack. But I don't think it's going to be this like fatal flaw on every single game every night, because matchup dependence, again, you're not seeing size every single time you're facing an ACC opponent. But when you do face them, you face a lot of it.
I am worried because of just how essential Michelle was to our winning formula last year. The bombs away approach works when you have a rebounding machine who was averaging close to double figures in rebounding, and she had several games above 14 or 15, and was the anchor of a pretty fierce defense both in just discouraging shots in the paint and ending possessions. And she was also much faster than a lot of her center opposition, both preseason and in the ACC. So um, it's not just that we lack size in general, but it's also that we are missing specifically Michelle and her unique skill set, which she developed over the last 5 years, 6 years playing
Yeah.
for Shennum.
But I'm hoping. Okay, our turnover numbers last year were abysmal. Worst in the conference, near the worst in the nation as far as just a turnover ratio for Cal. I look at this lineup now and I see better ball handling across the board a little bit. And you can't point to like one player last year as being the vector of turnovers. It happened at all positions. Yo was prone to turnovers at times. Michelle was prone to turnover. Marta. So I'm hoping that the team is a better ball control, ball disciplined team. Perimeter wing cutting oriented to help overcome the lack of size. So in other words, if they focus on ball control, it's going to hopefully overcome some of the size deficiencies.
I have to throw out there, we're supposed to be previewing the next year, so it's not really on topic, but boy, it was just crushing as a Cal fan to lose Abigor, who really just produced Michelle Light numbers as a freshman in limited playing time that just portended a really successful college career. And so, thoughts her way. I no idea what's going through her head, how she's feeling, but we hope she's well.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, I hope, I think you worry about injuries that would lead you to retire, and you hope that she's doing okay.
Terry, do you have a women's basketball take before we head back to the men?
Did either of you see enough from? Yeah, well, I'm curious. Did either of you see any of the? Okay, so the three players that had rotational time were Lola Adonias, Gisela Mall, and Anastasia Drusuni. I'm wondering if any of them step up. They were fine rotational players, but none of them like, oh my God, they're going to be a star and a starter, going forward here, right? The lineup was heavily dependent on the 5 starters last year. And now I'm worried that last year was effectively a lost class potentially, because not a ton of development. And I'm wondering how the 3 sophomores fit in this year.
Yeah. So Donia seemed to be the sort of preferred player initially, and I think they kind of liked her defensive acumen or sense, but I think the challenge there was size and strength a little bit. And so you would hope that maybe, with another year of college level strength and conditioning, that she would maybe be able to stand up a little bit more physically. But I don't know if she has a frame that would necessarily build in that way. So we'll have to keep our eyes out for that when the season starts. Maul had injury issues, so it's a little tough to say. I think Drusuni was probably the best shooter of the 3, but also I think struggled a little bit defensively, size-wise. So I'm not, my assumption is that they would be more back of the rotation options until proven otherwise, but I'm always happy to be proven wrong.
Right. Yeah.
It's been one of Nick's continual, regrets when talking about this women's program, is just how many international players aside from Lulu that we've given scholarships to and haven't really turned out to be contributors. So I think he's also worried about Justine falling up, Justine being one of those as well. One of the things that I think about last year's roster, Zara King, she flashed a lot of
Yeah, she did.
of potential, and then losing her to transfer portal was also. I don't think people are talking about it, but she could have been that bridge between Lulu and the next set of guards that are coming in.
Yeah, King was interesting because her she flashed a skill set that was intriguing without it resulting in any actual production as of yet. And those types of players are ones where sometimes the light bulb clicks and the skill set turns into, like points, stops, what have you. And sometimes it just doesn't. I'll be curious to see where her career goes, regardless of exactly what school she's doing it at. All right, swinging things back towards the men's basketball side. Take number 3, opinion number 3, intriguing question number 3. Terry, you want to kick us off for the final round?
I think we've talked through so much of I think so much of what we're wondering in terms of the Cal roster. I think the biggest question is I saw Don had already submitted that he predicts that we're going to be ninth, while the rest of the ACC media predicts that we'll be 14th.
That's on the women's side, right?
Women's side, sorry. But pretty similar. We're picked to finish 14th in the 18-team ACC this season by the Athletic, and I think that's pretty standard. Um, but I think everyone's just throwing darts at a dartboard, and nobody knows what's aside from Duke at the top, where the rest of the men are going to end up this season. So, what would be our expectations? What would exceed expectations, and what would make Coach Madsen, start to feel the heat from the administration and fans in terms of where we end up at the ACC?
So the non-conference schedule is light. He has 3 real games at Kansas State, which is probably going to be a loss. UCLA on neutral court, but neutral being San Jose, which I'm going to say, let's say, a 60% loss. And then Vanderbilt at home, which maybe, or Utah at home. Sorry, Utah at home. Toss-up? Question mark? Maybe a slight favorite for Cal. The other 10 games are your Morgan States of the world, your Pacifics. He should not have less than 10 wins going into conference play. Then the schedule stacked up fairly nicely. The toss-up games being on the road and the ones we would be pure underdogs, Duke, etc., Duke, Louisville, at home. I mean, like we open conference play at Louisville, who's currently preseason number 6 or number 8 in the country. So the schedule stacks up to have success. The question is, can you turn it into actual wins? So I'm expecting 10 wins minimum non-conference, and then if he grinds 8 wins in conference to get to 18 plus, that's going to be a successful year. Even we may not be convinced oh my God, Cal's turned the corner, but I think they're gonna. When I talked to Coach Madsen back in October, he called his number of 20. I don't know if he's going to get to 20, but I think there's going to be in that 17, 18, 19 range, just because the schedule is so favorable. And if he can figure out enough of a balance out of the, quite honestly, a little bit of a cupcake non-conference schedule of what your true starting 5 is and finishing 5 is, he'll get 7+ wins in conference.
Funny, I would answer it slightly differently. I mean, the short answer would be, let's have a winning record for the first time since before the bad times. Which it is that it's a baby step, but you got to start somewhere. But I think I'd like to be more expansive, which is that I think what Cal fans are going to want from this year is a feeling that a foundation has been built for next year, which is to say that we're going to go into the 2026-27 season feeling like we know what this team is. We feel like there's a foundation to be at least average in the ACC, maybe have some upside. Maybe we could even dream of an NCAA tournament bid if everything fell right. Because the problem of the first 2 years of the Madsen era hasn't necessarily been the on-court product. It's the fact that the on-court product hasn't built into the next year. So, like, we bring in a bunch of guys, they try to become cohesive in some sort of team way, and then they all leave. And then we bring in a new set of guys, and we try to get cohesive, and they all go away. And it feels like you're starting over every single year. I want to go into next season feeling like we're not starting over, and that what we're not starting over with is actually something that I'm at least a little bit excited about.
So that's one of my fears, though, is he brought in Illich, Camden, the other ones as 1 year one and dones, right? And on paper, it looks like that's the foundation to having the highest outcome potential this year of overloading Illich, overloading Camden at the wing, and Bell, who's also got 1 year left, and then you have Giovanni Ruff, Symmetry Carr. Justin Pippen, right, who's got only 1 year done, Samiani. How does he balance it out to give you that sense, Nick, of, okay, we're going to have continuity because I've seen Pippen grow enough and fingers crossed he sticks around. And the two freshmen, they contributed enough that they're incentivized to stick around. They're not playing with Wilkinson again, right? That's my fear, is a successful year on the court may not immediately translate to, and that's immediately going to carry over to this following season.
I think that's a legitimate fear. It's one of those cases where, like, we brought in some guys like Nolan Dorsey is an example where he was
Exactly.
He's an intriguing point guard out of Campbell, really defensive focused, high energy. I liked watching him play. I feel like I'm going to enjoy watching him in a Cal uniform. But it would probably be better for Cal's long-term future if Symmetry Carr got the majority of the playing time at point guard and showed that he's a guy for the future. And, if you're Mark Madsen, you just got to play the guy who's best right now. But I know which guy is more likely to be the foundation of Cal's return to the NCAA tournament if that happens. And Symmetry Carr is the more likely answer ultimately.
Yeah, I think that, just to jump in here, like the best case scenario for us is probably the freshmen and some of those guys like we talked about with Yaney and with Pippen, those guys taking the bulk of the minutes and eating into it as the season progresses, and the 1 year guys filling in the rotational spots. That's probably our best case scenario, and we're winning on top of that. That's probably the best case scenario, because the moment we start losing and these guys also aren't performing or playing up to standard, means he's going to push the minutes of these more experienced, fourth year, fifth year guys, and maybe that leads to more wins. Right now, as Nick said, Madsen needs wins. He just needs wins on the court, and so that's going to be the balancing act that he has to do. But once again, our best case scenario is that we're winning with Pippen, Yaney, Carr, Ruff as like our main offensive weapons, and the other guys filling in the rotation roles. And that definitely checks all the boxes of we're winning now, we're building towards the future, and most likely, most of these guys won't leave because they'll be the entrenched starters here. And then on top of that, we probably have a lot more scholarships to work with to build out that rotation and that roster for next season.
Just want to make sure we're remembering DK Dutt and Monte Casanas, two sophomores, 6'11" and 7'0".
Yes.
Also, it's not just a pure wing in the backcourt. You got, again, four really potentially talented big men. I'm hoping he gives enough time to those lower division folks to get some time and some experience, because they're foundational. If you're going to actually develop Montes Casanis over 4 years, you're
The
Lithuanian,
future
Nick.
is yellow, green, and red.
That's there's potential there, but that's my worry. Just balancing it all out as the season goes.
This feels like a much more balanced roster in terms of years than the first 2 years of Madsen, which were a lot of very late college, fifth and sixth year seniors. There's a lot of sophomores and juniors in this roster right now.
First year, you got to give him a little bit of a break, right? I don't think first year and year two are the same thing.
Sure.
He did what he could to get talented players in, Tyson, Amac, Kennedy, Cohen, obviously, and they were one-year rentals as he, got a late jump, being a late hire, not a late hire, being a hire though after March to build something. We're all still disappointed and burnt a little bit by Andre and Jeremiah leaving last year. That's just
Yeah.
personally hard for me to still rectify.
I mean, yeah. I mean, much like we talk about on the football side with Jaden Knott and Mendoza, and not only just their departures, but the timing of the departures also matters too.
Yep.
And Andre's departure, I think that late in the cycle definitely hamstrung us in being able to bring in any sort of talent to fill in that big of a space. So, we'll see. I mean, this has the feels of his first year here. If you're looking at the macro of it, it's like his first year he comes in, he's just trying to get wins under his belt. Second year, he brings in all these young guys to try and build a team out. And then the talented young guys all leave. So he's scrambling back into that year one mentality of, can I just build the team here to get some wins regardless? And that's kind of what it's trending towards, at least for this year. So we'll see if he can get those wins.
I think they're going to be okay. I'm also interested in, are they hiring a GM, right? So you've got Megan Williams for the women's team. You've got Ron Rivera for football. And the common denominator when we've talked to both of them has been they allow me to coach, and they handle the business side and the agents, negotiations and NIL stuff and all the off the field / off the court stuff. Madsen doesn't have that yet. How much is that still potentially, I'm going to say a burden to him? And then with the new AD coming in potentially within next year, right, next spring. How much is Madsen potentially concerned that there's not a GM here? I might be on a mild, at least watch list here if things don't go well, and a new AD is coming in next year who, may want to make a change based on how the year plays out. I think this is going to be interesting to see how it goes in spring.
All right, we'll move on. Nick, you were handling MC duties for me.
I believe we're on our last round of women's basketball talking points, and I can kick us off. I've made references to how excited I am about what Cal can do defensively. That I think the players they're bringing back are good defensive players, and they're bringing in some really exciting defensive talent, highlighted by Walker and Shepard. My question is, when Lulu Twydale is not scoring, either because she is having an off game, or she's on the bench getting a rest, or maybe she's only going to be at 18 points per game a scorer, that'd still be incredible. Cal needs other players to score. Who are those players going to be? It's not entirely clear as of right now where the scoring burden is going to come from. Now, maybe that's Puff Morris. Maybe she is going to be able to be a scoring point guard, but I think that maybe an early expectation for somebody who's 5'5" as a freshman to immediately know how to score over ACC defenders. Maybe that's Naya Onjukwu, who scored well from Oregon State, but we've talked about how difficult that jump is. Maybe it's another freshman, but I am a little concerned about where the scoring is going to come from other than Lulu Twydale, because there's not really a proven obvious scoring option on this roster. We'll see.
I mean, yeah, I think for me the additional question to Nick's point is who in our front court is going to average more than 6 points a game? I think that's the big thing for me is if you can nail someone for me and say that person is going to get you 8 to 12 points on any given night in your front court, I'd be so much more relaxed about the scoring balance of this team going forward. Even if Lulu is having an off night, then I feel like the spacing will allow for someone else to maybe get those shots in that. But if Lulu's the only one that's scoring and she's getting 18 to 22 a night, and we don't have anyone else, like even if it's a wing person, then that's a tough one. But I'm hoping that it's at least one of those bigs getting you close to double digits every night, just to help Lulu out and potentially the spacing on the
who knows?
opposite end
Maybe
as well.
Puff is just slicing through defenses left and right and dropping little drop offs to Walker for easy layups. I don't know what kind of offense we're going to have here. It's a little bit of a blank slate, at least offensively, when you've just lost everybody who produced points other than Lulu Twydale.
Well, Nick went. Don, I will pass it off to you.
So yeah, I picked them to finish ninth. Consensus was 12th for them. Again, there's a middle class in the ACC. In the women's side, there's a clear upper class, there's a clear bottom class, and there's a whole huge middle class. I think they're going to be kind of smack down in the middle of that middle class. They're not going to get to 7, not necessarily knock off one of the top ones, but they're going to avoid the basement here. I think we're all going to be slightly underwhelmed because we're still expecting a 25-9 season after last year. And the fan base is they're going to end up somewhere between 17 and 21 wins. And we'll just feel a little bit of a letdown simply because it wasn't a continuation of last year. All the points that we've all made here are valid. Where's the scoring going to come from? You don't lose 4/5 of your starting lineup and that much of your scoring and not take a mild step back. I don't think we're going to take a big step back as a lot of the other teams are. So that's why I still kind of predict us to finish kind of in that middle because the recruiting class, this year's a transition year. Can Taylor Barnes contribute? What has Puff become? What does Isis Johnson Musa develop into also? It's a top 20 recruiting class. But this year is going to be growing pains.
And honestly, I'm fine with those growing pains as long as when going into next year, kind of similar with the men, actually. Like, if we feel like Cal's freshmen this year adapt well to the college game and are on the roster next year, I think that counts as a successful season.
Totally agree. So I'm with you. I'm hoping that's how it plays out. And Sharman's got a better track record, and I feel more confident in Sharman's ability to retain.
I think also adding on to that, though, I'd like to at least be in contention for postseason play from both teams. Even if we don't make it, I'd like to be, is Cal last 4 out? Is Cal the bubble? We should be in that conversation all season long.
I'd be thrilled with an IT for men. Heck, even CBI if it comes in that 17-win range.
Wouldn't shock me if the women are kind of on the fringes of the bubble, just with the structure of women's basketball and the vast disparity that there is between power conference teams and non-power conference teams, where it's pretty common for a team that goes 7-11 in the ACC to sort of be on the bubble, where if you pull off an upset in the ACC tournament and beat a team that's going to be a 3 seed or a 2 seed, that's what puts you over, because just so few teams get those types of wins over a Duke or an NC State or a Notre Dame. So I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation for the women, though I would be a little surprised if they actually made the tournament with so much turnover. But if they did, that would be a heck of a feather in the cap of the program.
Agreed. That's exactly where I'm at. Like, I think they're going to be just on the other side of the bubble on that. But again, let's show progress and let's make sure we can retain it for season over season.
Terence, your last point.
Um, I'd like to see, regardless of which basketball team we talk about, I'd like to see Puff Morris on the All ACC freshman team. I think she's going to do it. I'm so in the bag for her already. So, I know she's 5'5", but I'm a Puff believer. Uh, when women's basketball jerseys go on sale, then I will purchase one.
There are so many. I'm with you. There are so many good freshmen in the ACC this year. It's just it stacked. They're stacked from a freshman perspective. Stanford's got three that and two of them made the all ACC freshman preseason team. There's going to be a lot of competition. I'm going to argue there's more competition for the all freshman team than there is for the all conference team.
I think one thing that's worth this is a little bit of an appeal to history rather than like logic or scouting or anything, but the best moments in Cal women's basketball history have come when diminutive but highly rated point guards from the state of California stay in the state of California and play for our university.
Totally.
Is Puff Alexis Gray Lawson or Brittany Boyd? That's a silly comparison since I've never seen her play a game of basketball. But it's impossible for my brain not to make those connections. And I would say that the way that she has been talked about coming into this season is similar to how those two players were talked about when they arrived on campus. And that's reason enough to be excited and intrigued.
We're going to run back 2011 all over again. All right, let's do this.
I mean, Nick, you also forget the high school that she comes from also gave us a very, very good football player as well by the name of Marvin Jones. So, the track record, that if you're going to talk about it, we might as well talk about all of the pedigree that came
we
from
all
that high
love
school
Rancho
into our university.
Cucamonga.
I played at Aurora. They were in my high school basketball league.
At Tijuana High, yeah.
Yep.
That'll get us. That's our new pipeline. Anyone from Etijuana High that wants to play for our university, please come on down. We would love to.
We do have a Long Beach Poly player though coming in as well on the men's side. So
That's
Giovanni
true.
Ruff.
Yeah.
Long Beach Poly, for those who are unaware, is the high school of Deshaun Jackson. They've put the most players in the NFL. And on the basketball side, they had, amongst others, Tyus Edmonds. So if Giovanni Ruff could replicate Tyus Edmonds' career, I would greatly appreciate that.
One
Well,
notable
I believe
NC2A
that's-
tournament highlight. I'll take it for Cal.
Yes. The whole point of this entire thing was to make sure we get to send Nick and Don to, whatever NCAA Final Four appearance that we will
Within my lifetime.
undoubtedly make.
Exactly right.
It's already happened once in your lifetime, Nick. Where were
young
you
and
when
poor.
it happened? Oh, all right. Well, I believe that's it, right? That was 3 men's, 3
I
women's.
believe we've covered
went
it all.
around all
Yep.
of that. So we've covered it all. I'm gonna throw this to Don just because I know he knows.
Okay.
Don, when is the first game for the men's team and when is the first game for the women's team?
Women's play October 28th, an exhibition at Haas against, I can't remember who. So I know it's when. But then they play in Paris as part of a doubleheader with Duke, not against Duke. Duke's playing Baylor. Cal's playing Vanderbilt in Paris on November 3rd. As an opener, so I mean that's a way to start off. At least a major high P5 team there as your first game overseas. Men start on the 2nd November at home against. Oh God, do I want to say Morgan State? I gotta look this up. Sorry, I know it's
It might
November
be the
2nd.
second. Is it Morgan State? I thought Morgan State was the second game. Am I wrong?
Maybe I'll look. I'm looking it up right now. I know it's more. I know it's 2nd.
Penn State Bakersfield.
CSUB. Yeah, thank you. That's right, because we were talking about that on the side, right? About they're in turmoil, right? Because they just let go of their coach like literally less than a month ago, not Taylor Barnes, something like that though. And yeah, so November 2nd against CSUB, the Roadrunners.
They used to be like in the early '90s a regular in the Division Two, which no longer exists, Final Four. So they used to they were huge rivals with UC Riverside at the time. I definitely remember that.
Same opening game as last year too. They opened up against CSUB.
Yeah.
Well, there you have, folks. Those are our starters in the next coming weeks for Cal women's basketball and men's basketball back at Haas Pavilion. Thank you, gentlemen, for hopping on this predictions, takes, questions podcast. I appreciate all three of you, and you can see all their written stuff over at rightforcalifornia.com, so go check it out over there. And yeah, that's it for us. And as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.